All right, so this is kind of like my first tutorial. I mean, it's not really a tutorial. So what I'm doing here is I am starting this new channel and I'm just trying to see if this kind of gets any momentum. I'm hoping to keep some of these episodes about 30 minutes long. Yeah, let's jump into it. So the point I'm doing these videos for is because I want to be getting to visual effects and animation. So animation and VFX. Now, anyone who wants to get into special effects, right? The one thing you need to know is that animation and special effects have all kind of fallen under one umbrella, right? So they're kind of under this big, broad rooftop called animation and VFX now. Before it used to be just special effects or just animation, but they've kind of like have crossed paths to the point you really can't separate them anymore. You can only make them more granular by getting them more niched into certain parts of the process. But everything from whether you're doing major motion pictures like doing dinosaurs on the Jurassic Park films or the Starships or any Pixar films, it's all under that visual effect and animation roof. So that's where we're at right now. Now that the point of this is the fact that I am learning to get into animation and visual effects. I've taken a little background about me. I went to school for probably about 2.5, 3 years off and on. I'm just talking about total time for animation and VFX. So I have some baseline understanding. However, I'm still not at a process to where I can start finding work. So the point of this channel is to help explore ways we can become visual effects artists. At this point right now, for this episode, I wanted to start getting into some of the 3D elements. Now I know Maya is the industry standard. I know Maya is the industry standard, but Maya's expensive. I'm sorry, I don't have money for Maya. I can't afford Maya. I know you probably can't afford Maya, but you know what's not expensive? Blender. Blender's not expensive, and in fact, Blender has become is becoming slowly into an industry standard in itself. People can say, "Oh, Blender's not as good as Maya," but you gotta keep in mind there are cartoons that have been made with Blender that are full-length animated feature films. The one specifically I can think of is Next Gen. Next Gen was a film that was completely made in Blender, not Maya, Blender, and yet it is a Netflix feature cartoon with voice actors such as I can't think of his name. All right, let's go over here. Let's go to IMDb. IMDb. This is why would you search for IMDb? I want you to take me to IMDb. Okay. Of course, they get Next Generation, Next Gen. Let's take a look at this because now IMDb is going to be like one of your best friends because IMDb is like the authority on everything. Like literally everybody, it shows everything you need to know from this to the cast. It's all in there. David Cross, that's who I was looking for. David Cross. David Cross is that's who played. But he does a lot of like voice acting, so that's why I said he's like a big deal. So anyway, that's not the point. So all right, so anyway, the fact is this movie on Netflix was created in Blender. I mean, that's just phenomenal. All right, so anyway, okay, so I'm getting off to a slow start, so let's get moving. So here I'm trying to explore about how to become a special effects artist, and so one of the first things I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to go to YouTube, and we're going to learn. Let's learn to be special effects artists, but I need to learn in Blender. So right now let's see, Blender tutorial. Moran. Okay, so this is what I was doing for a while, where I was kind of like using this. I haven't actually done all of it yet, so I want to find the very first one. Okay, so I can't find the first one. So sometimes the best thing to do is to go to CG Fast Track. Let's see, I'm gonna go to the channel. I really want to do this sword and stone thing, but I want to review the basics. There's that one. 145. Did they change this up? Yeah, this is it. Okay. Okay, so Blender Fast Track. Now wait, what did they do different? I feel like this is different because we did a Minecraft thing before.
The biggest mistake most Blender beginners make is not learning the 3 most important objects first. This series will start you as a complete beginner, as if you have never used Blender 3D before. In part 1, we will build an easy to follow Minecraft project that will quickly help you feel less intimidated and more confident while working inside of Blender. In part 2, we will build a fantasy sword model as you continue to rapidly level up your Blender skills. I remember how difficult it was as a beginner, which is why I build tutorials like this one, and if you have struggled in the past, I encourage you to stick it out with me to discover the 3 most important objects to learn first, right after the trailer. Our goal with chapter 1 is to get to know the 3 most important.
Okay, I want to pause it right here for a second. So the reason why I'm pausing it right here is I just want to point out. Okay, so this is it. This is a tutorial by CG Fast Track. Now I did go through this tutorial once before. However, granted, even though I went through it once before, I felt necessary to go through it again. All right. Through this video, because I feel like if I'm going to start, let's start from the beginning, from where I'm at. And I used it to work in Blender, and there were some challenges, there were some curveballs that I was definitely not ready for when doing this. So so this is good. This is real good. So anyway, the point is that the point is I want to start from the beginning, and there were some curveballs that I just didn't see. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go through this, and we'll just start step by step on this video by CG Fast Track, right? And we will start doing things in Blender. So let's take a look at what we got here.
Objects inside of Blender. And the problem when we first start is that Blender feels like an alien spaceship. There are 1,000,001 buttons, so many different tabs, and all of these tiny panels, and eventually Blender will just crash, and it can be easy just to give up entirely. And this is why we at cgfasttrack.com put in the effort to simplify the process and build the courses that we wish we had when we first started. The first of the 3 objects, and by far the most important one, is the default cube. The default cube is a mesh object, and in this series we're going to learn how to change its shape, we're going to create details within the shape, and completely transform it into an entirely customized model. The second of the most important objects is this very weird looking triangular shaped object over here, which is our camera. What we will learn in this series is how to animate the camera and how to take our 3D models and turn them into animated movies. The third most important object, and by far the most underrated one, is this weird circular shaped thing over here, which is our light. With the light, we can do very basic things like boosting up and down the intensity, but we can also transform our scenes from very flat looking models to very cinematic 3D renders. Throughout this entire series, to keep it as simple and easy to follow as possible, we're going to be hyper focused on getting to know these three objects. And we're going to get hands-on with these three objects in the next chapter, so let's get going. Now we need to start.
Okay, so I want to pause right here for a second. One of the things I wanted to say about this is the things he's talking about. If you look at, he talks about the cube, the camera, and the camera and the light source. Okay, so these are very important objects, and it's kind of neat because I didn't learn about these in the very beginning. When I was in school doing Maya, okay, the first thing they introduced us to was just this little cube thing here. It's called an object, okay? So one thing you gotta remember, that cube is called an object. So anytime you see stuff like this right here, that's talking about that shape. So, and of course there's many different types of objects. You know, you have a cube, you have a ball, they'll have like the circular ones, you'll have a cylinder, you'll have a cone. And I want to say there's a couple other different kind of presetted objects you'll always start with, right? And then you take those objects and you just kind of manipulate them to form something else. But they always keep it down to the basics in the beginning, and you just learn how to manipulate them. And it can be very, very daunting. There's all kinds of like different points. I don't want to get too deep into it because it's a lot to explain, but just know that these are your most basic building blocks right here for modeling. And I'm only telling you that because that's how I learned it. All right, and the second thing of the camera, when he's telling about the camera, even though he's probably going to explain all this in the future tutorials, like I said, I have some baseline knowledge already. This second thing with the camera, what's really amazing about the camera is this is the part where kind of like all your cinematics come together. So if you render a video and you want to do a camera movement, like either up close, far away, panning around, like anytime you watch a 3D movie, anytime you watch a scene in a 3D movie, it's done through that. Because that's going to be the part that they want to render from, right? Because you're not gonna see anything from that. They're not. If you did, it would literally just sit there the whole time. If I rendered it from that, from just the viewport, which is basically just this general square right here, you wouldn't get anything. And of course, the last thing he says is the light. Let's switch gears a little bit here. Let me open up Blender, because I downloaded Blender. Blender's completely free. You can't beat that, and it's an excellent tool. In fact, there's a lot of people who don't even care if you use Blender or not. Really, they really don't, unless they need files that they can work with, like say they need you to be able to like pass files off from one to the other. All right, so I'm gonna kind of cheat here because I already kind of know how to do this. Yep, that's fine. Yep, that's fine. Let's see. So I'm gonna go to general. Like, look at this. Blender can all this. General is just what we're about to do. Your regular 3D stuff. You got general, 2D animation, sculpting, VFX, which I'm stoked to get into. I hear this thing has got a powerful tracking system from what I'm looking at. Video editing, which I may not be doing a lot of video editing in this, but it would be kind of interesting to try. All right, I don't know what these are for, but this is your kind of like idea. Ooh, credits. Oh, it's probably like looks like this is all like informational stuff, like it goes to websites. Anyway, general. All right, here we are. So this is your basic Blender window. This is where we're at. Pull this up a little bit because I like to. I got this weird thing where I got to see the timeline. Anyway, so yeah, this is your basic thing. This is your cube, your object. This is your camera, right here, and this is your light source. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. So let's flip over to. Let's go back to the video. All right, because I'm still kind of learning this, trying to figure this out. But let's have him tell us what it's going to tell us.
Making our objects do some stuff. And the goal with chapter 2 is to get to know the 3 most important tools to modify objects. You'll notice as we click on our objects, we'll see an orange highlight around the most recent selection. Step number 1 is to select our default cube. Then we will go to the upper left side of the 3D view where we can find our toolbar. Any one of these buttons can be used to manipulate our Blender scenes in some way. Step number 2 is to select our move tool, which is the third tool from the top, shaped with a 4 arrow icon. After we select our cube and our move tool, we can see that we have a red, green, and blue handle, which is our move tool on our object. Now we can click, hold, and drag on any one of these handles. We can move this horizontally with the red and green handles. We can move it downwards and vertically with the blue handle. Move tool is by far the most frequently used tool inside of Blender, and this is the only option on our toolbar that we'll be using on all of part 1 of this series, making it super easy for us. Step number 3 is the second most important tool, which is our rotation tool, directly under our move tool on our toolbar. Once we activate our rotation tool, we can now see that we have another red, green, and blue handle on our cube, and now we can rotate our object in any direction. Very simple. Simply click, hold, and drag any of the red, green, or blue handles in a circular motion to rotate our object around. Step number 4 is our third most important tool, which is our scale tool. It's directly under our rotation tool on our toolbar. Once we activate this scale tool, we'll notice that we have a white handle on the outside of our scale tool, along with our red, green, and blue handles. The white handle is a uniform scale, meaning it's going to scale the object evenly. The white handle is the one I use the most on the scale tool. Alright, that's a wrap for our move, rotate, and scale tools, which is our 3 most important tools to use inside of Blender. A common issue that we all experience when first starting Blender is that the icons and the text is actually really small and hard to see. To solve this problem, step number 1 will go to our edit menu and then we'll go all the way down to our preferences. And the very first parameter is our resolution scale. And by default, Blender sets this value very small, which makes it very difficult for us. If you're on a smaller monitor, a smaller value of 1 might be okay, but if you're on a higher res 4K monitor, somewhere between 1.25 and a value of 1.5 should be comfortable. And for trackpad users, your next step is to go to the Input tab, and then we're going to turn on Emulate 3-button mouse.
Okay, this is something to pay attention to that I didn't pick up before right away. It says emulate 3-button mouse if you're using a trackpad. That means that you're using a laptop and you're not using a mouse, is what it comes down to, right? You're not using a mouse. So that's useful for that. But it's also telling me, I have realized the issue he was saying is if you're using something like a 4K monitor, so a super high res monitor, you want to put it at 1.25, and which I made a mistake once before. See, right now where I'm at, I'm actually really comfortable. This is not a high res monitor. I know what it's talking about. Where did he tell me to go? Yeah. I think it's under edit. There we go. It's under edit preferences, because I'm learning this stuff. Now, see, here's the thing. Check this out. If I do 1.25, right, and I hit enter, it's all a lot bigger. But I don't need it this big. I can see it fine. My stuff is not high res. So if I just stick with just 1, yeah, it's fine. I can see it fine. My stuff's not high res, so be aware of that when looking at these tutorials. I didn't pick up on that the first time. So, and the thing is like after this, I'm gonna be completely lost because I'm not gonna be going through these videos twice. I'm just doing just this one because I feel like it's part of the tutorial, so we should all kind of go through it together. All right. Let's get back to this buddy.
This is a requirement if you're using a trackpad instead of a traditional 3-button mouse. We'll cover the 3-button mouse and trackpad controls as we move forward. And then that brings us to our goal for this chapter, which is to get to know our 3 navigation controls. Step number 2 is our zoom tool. Using the middle mouse, scroll up and down. Just like we're scrolling up and down a web page, we can zoom in and out of our scene. And for trackpads, you either use 2-finger scroll to zoom or pinch to zoom in and out. Depending on what laptop you're on, either one may work. Try them both, and whichever one zooms in and out, that's the one you want to use moving forward. Step number 2 is our orbit tool. Simply hold down the middle mouse button to orbit around your scene. That is the middle mouse button. Hold it down to orbit around your scene. And for trackpad users, hold down Alt, then click and drag to orbit around. You can think of orbiting the same way the moon orbits around the Earth. We're just moving and rotating around the scene at the same time. If we want to choose different objects to orbit around, we can do so with step number 3, which is our frame selected tool. To start, I'll just select the camera and then I'll go to my view menu. I'm going to scroll down to the 5th button from the top and then select frame selected. What frame selected is going to do is snap you to an object so that your zoom and orbit tool is now reset and attached to a specific space in 3D, which makes it much easier for us to move around our scene. Then we can just practice our frame selected tool one more time. We'll select the light, go to the view menu, choose frame selected, which will snap us to the light, and then we'll practice orbiting around and zooming around once more. And then we'll do it one more time, going back to our cube using the view menu, go to frame selected, use that to snap to the cube, and then we'll just orbit and zoom around once more. And this brings us to our noob to pro navigation exercise. You want to practice going around to each object 3 different times. And this is going to help you build some muscle memory. The more muscle memory you build right now, the easier the rest of part 1 is going to be. So you want to practice and practice and practice. As you practice, we'll also integrate step number 4, which is our final navigation tool, which is our pan tool. Hold down shift, and then while holding shift, hold down the middle button on your mouse. Then we can move up and down and left and right, which is panning around our scene. And for trackpad users, hold down shift and alt, then click and drag to pan around your scene. All right, that's a wrap for our navigation tools. And this is your chance to practice a few more times. At this point, you're probably thinking, wow, this is kind of awkward and kind of difficult, and that's totally normal. We all experience that when we first start. It takes some time and it takes some practice getting that muscle memory built. And as we build our Minecraft project, we're going to continue to practice and continue to get better with these tools. Our goal next is to build out the first pillar of our Minecraft scene. And to pull this off, in chapter 4, we will get to know our snap and duplicate tools. So right now, most likely your 3D scene is all messed up like mine is right now. So to prevent any issues moving forward, step 1 is to reset your Blender file using the File menu, and then go to New and then General. This one button will save you a ton of stress. I know this from reading the comments in the original release. Hit the File, New, General button. After we reset our scene, it's super important that we do not move our default cube just yet. And step number 2 is we want to enable our snapping tool.
Hold up a second. That confused the daylights out of me. Let me get back to that.
Our goal next is to build out the first pillar of our Minecraft scene. And to pull this off, in chapter 4, we will get to know our snap and duplicate tools. So right now, most likely your 3D scene is all messed up like mine is right now. So to prevent any issues moving forward, step 1 is to reset your Blender file using the File menu, and then go to New and then General. This one button will save you a ton of stress. I know this from reading the comments in the original release. Hit the File, New, General button. After we reset our scene, it's super important that we do not move our default cube.
Okay, I see what he did there. Okay, that was what was confusing me. Okay, so these tutorials are really good, but the problem I have with it is sometimes he goes a little too like blah 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 blah, blah kind of prattling almost. You know, it just keeps going. You know, and the problem is the human mind does not like really absorb information like that. At least from what I can tell, it doesn't deal well with the constant blah 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 blah. You know, because when you listen to a song, for example, yeah, the song keeps going, but you're not trying to absorb anything from the song. It's just there to kind of just fill your ears. You're not really trying to get anything out of it, other than the fact you're just trying to enjoy the pleasant sounds. With this, I'm actually trying to get something out of it, but because it's almost like he doesn't take a breath, it gets very difficult to follow. So, and because of that, I have to go back a lot of times to kind of like figure out what he's doing. With that being said, let's go to our Blender. All right, so basically what he's saying is, I click over here, grab that. So just say if my stuff is all moved up and all kinds of twisted and all kinds of like all over the place, and it's basically not how it's supposed to be. Like it's all, like he said, squished, messed up. We're not in the starting position. He's basically saying he wants you to basically open a whole brand new file, not saved, is what he's saying. You open up the file, you go to new, you go to general. That's what we started with when we opened this window, general. So I click general, and it's going to ask me, do you want to save the changes to this file? Because if not, basically everything's going to be lost. So that's what he was trying to tell you, and trying to show you a very simple way. So you don't want to save this because this is not what you want to use, so you just get rid of it. Boom, back to normal. All right. Let's take a look at that again.
Cube just yet. And step number 2 is we want to enable our snapping tool. And the reason why we need our snapping tool is because it makes lining up our cubes nice and easy. And we can find this in the center of our 3D view all the way at the top. And it's going to be this little very small magnet shaped icon. Click on that magnet icon to turn it blue. If you can find the button that says global, it's just 2 buttons to the right of that. Once you turn that magnet shaped icon blue, and we are ready to start moving around our cube. Now to test our snap tool, we can select our cube and then select our move tool. And as we move our cube around, we can see that our cube is snapping incrementally, making it very easy for us to line up our cubes. And for step number 3, we're going to work on duplication. Duplicating our cubes can be a bit tricky, so be sure to keep your eyes on the video for this one, and then I'll do it twice and repeat it with you so it's a bit easier for you to follow along. To duplicate the cube, we'll start by selecting our cube and then going to the right click menu. Here we have a ton of useful tools to modify our objects. We want the duplicate objects button. Then we will notice our cube turns white and then begins to move around. Lining up our cubes this way can be really difficult, as you can see here. The solution to this, however, is to just hit the escape key while you're in this duplicate mode. And what that's going to do is tell Blender to drop the cube back to its original position. Then all we have to do is simply just move it up and line it up to the next object. Okay, so let's try this again, and this time you can follow along. First,
okay, so I'm going to stop it right there. So I see what he's doing. I'm going to stop it right there. I'm going to go back over here. So basically, he wants us to go up here to this little magnet, turn it on. And it's already on global, so I'm set. Everything is set. So all I have to do is, now, he was talking about duplicating. Well, first let's test this to make sure this works. Okay, we're set. We're set. We're definitely in the zone. I'm going to check my... Okay. All right. So you gotta watch these things. These things are your little increments right here. So I don't really know how to explain it. These tell you your position in space. Anyway, now I want to try a deep. Okay. So he was basically saying in the video tutorial to go here and hit duplicate objects, right? And I could do that. I can move it around, and then I just hit the escape button and it puts it back in place, and it does that. Great. Well, I'm gonna Control Z. All right. Move it up. Okay. Control Z. Put it back in place. I just want to make sure it didn't duplicate. There is a simpler way to do this, because having to sit here and go through a menu every time slows me the heck down. So I was sitting there trying to figure out, how can I do this? There is a quicker way. It is Shift Duplicate. And then, so Shift D, I'm sorry. If you go to Shift D, it duplicates. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit Escape, and I can do it. So now I'm gonna Control Z, which undoes, and there's no more queue. And I know, because it kind of disappears. This is your little breakdown right here. I don't fully know how to fully explain this because I'm still kind of learning it myself. I know this from Maya's standpoint. There are similarities between Maya and Blender, so the learning curve isn't as steep for me as it would be for someone who's brand new. But yeah. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. I only want to keep these videos down to 30 minutes at a time, roughly plus or minus, to a certain extent. No more than 5 minutes over, no more than 5 minutes under. But I want to keep it down to about 30 minutes, and I want to kind of do this on an episode by episode basis. If you want to check these guys out, this is CG Fast Track. Definitely check them out. I'll put a link in the description specifically for this video, and you can do your own experimenting. You can download Blender for free. You can check out this video, and you can just start messing with it and learn how to do this. And the reason why I'm trying to learn this is because no matter what you do, practicing 3D modeling, practicing animation is fairly universal. And as long as you can get those things down, all you have to do is learn the different curves of going from one program to another. And it becomes very simple. So far from what I can see, the actual process of how to model and how to manipulate things doesn't really change that much, at least not what I've seen so far. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode, guys.